The Indianapolis 500 is one of three legs of the Triple Crown of motorsports, the others being the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the Monaco Grand Prix. As a result, drivers from all around the world have come to Indianapolis for a chance at glory. So far, Graham Hill has been the only driver to claim the Triple Crown, as he won Monaco 3 times between 1963 and 1969, the Indianapolis 500 in 1966, and Le Mans in 1972. Additionally, as of 2019, 5 drivers have won both the Indianapolis 500 and the Formula One World Championship: Graham Hill, Jim Clark, Mario Andretti, Emerson Fittipaldi, and Jacques Villeneuve. However, there have been various drivers from Formula One whose trips to Indiana were not as memorable. Today, we'll be looking at some of those drivers. Jochen Rins, 1967 to 1969. Rins won the 1965 24 Hours of Le Mans and started 60 Formula One races from 1964 to 1970 and won 10 of them, including the 1969 United States Grand Prix and the 1970 Monaco Grand Prix. He also won the 1970 World Championship in a season that saw him win 5 races. Unfortunately, Rins did not actually live to see his championship, as he was killed in a crash while practicing for the Italian Grand Prix, and nobody was able to overtake him in points. He entered the Indianapolis 500 3 times in his career. In 1967, Rins initially drove for Friedkin Enterprises in an Eagle Ford, but was bumped from the field by Jackie Stewart. Afterwards, Rins was able to qualify for the race with the All-American Racers in an Eagle Gurney Westlake Ford, starting in 32nd place. In the race itself, he struggled before ultimately retiring with valve problems after 108 of 200 laps, resulting in a 24th place finish. In 1968, Rins was driving for Brabham Racing Organization in Formula One and had a disappointing season that saw his only points finishes be a pair of 3rd place finishes. He also drove at Indianapolis for them and had a much easier time qualifying. He would start in 16th place in his Brabham Repco. However, Rins' race was very short-lived as he suffered a burnt piston after just 5 laps and finished in 32nd place. Rins was with Team Lotus in 1969 and was brought over by the team to the 500. He was able to drive a revolutionary Lotus Ford. However, Rins struggled in the car during practice and appeared to be in jeopardy of failing to qualify. As this was happening, teammate Mario Andretti had a terrible crash in his Lotus after a parts failure. Following this, the Lotuses of Andretti, Rins, and Graham Hill, who was also struggling for speed, were withdrawn. While Andretti was able to successfully qualify a tried-and-true Bronner Hawk Ford in 2nd place and then ultimately win the race, Rins was left on the sidelines and never raced in the 500 again before his death. Nelson Piquet, 1992 and 1993. Brazilian racing driver Nelson Piquet is often considered to be one of the greatest in the history of Formula One. Seeing that he was able to win the World Championship in 1981, 1983, and 1987, along with 23 races, including the Italian Grand Prix in 1983, 1986, and 1987. Piquet's 2 appearances at Indianapolis did not go so great, however, and not from lack of talent. Piquet first appeared at the Indianapolis 500 in 1992, a year after he retired from Formula One, driving a Lola Buick for Team Menard. Piquet adapted quickly to the track and was amongst the fastest drivers in practice. It appeared that he would be a contender for the win. Unfortunately, just before pole day, Piquet was involved in a severe practice crash as he suddenly lifted his throttle to enter the pit lane due to a caution, causing him to lose control and hit the outside wall nose first. It caused severe injuries to each of Piquet's legs. 4-time 500 winner Al Unser Sr. replaced Piquet and would eventually finish in 3rd place. After a year of rehabilitation, Piquet returned to Indianapolis in 1993, once again with Team Menard in a Lola Menard. This time he qualified for the race in 13th place. He joined fellow world champions Emerson Fittipaldi, Mario Andretti, and Nigel Mansell in the field. In the race, Piquet did not last long as he suffered an engine failure after 38 laps and retired to finish in 32nd place.
Michele Alboreto, 1996.
In his Formula One career from 1981 to 1994, Michele Alboreto was fairly underrated. He won 5 races and managed to finish 2nd in the 1985 World Championship standings to Alain Prost. Alboreto would later win the 1997 24 Hours of Le Mans. Tragically, he would be killed in a testing crash at Euro Speedway Lausitz in 2001. For 1996, Alboreto competed in the newly formed Indy Racing League. In the 5 races held that year, split between 2 separate seasons, he finished in the top 10 4 times. At Indianapolis, Alboreto drove for Team Scandia in a Renard Ford Cosworth. Because of the results his car had had in the first 2 races of the season, Alboreto was guaranteed a starting position in the 500, provided he could reach a speed of 220 miles per hour. He would ultimately qualify for the race in 12th place. In the race, Alboreto ran in the middle of the field and finished in 30th place due to an engine failure after 38 laps. Johnny Herbert, 2002. During his time in Formula One, Johnny Herbert was one of the more popular drivers in the sport. In his career from 1989 to 2000, Herbert was able to win 3 times at the British Grand Prix and the Italian Grand Prix in 1995 and the 1999 European Grand Prix. He also managed to win the 1991 24 Hours of Le Mans. By 2002, Herbert was out of Formula One and was competing in the American Le Mans Series. However, he also had IndyCar ambitions. Herbert intended to make his debut in the 2001 Indy Racing League season finale at Texas Motor Speedway in a Heritage Motorsports G-Force Infinity. However, Herbert did not compete in the race after it was rescheduled due to the September 11th attacks. He would return the following year at the Indianapolis 500 for Duesenberg Brothers Racing in a Dallara Chevrolet. During practice, Herbert was often in the bottom half of speed rankings. He would not complete a qualifying attempt on the first weekend of qualifying as the second day was completely rained out. On the third and final day, Herbert had a commitment to the Grand Prix of Sonoma at Sears Point Raceway for the American Le Mans Series. The plan was to qualify early at Indianapolis, then get a flight over to California. Unfortunately, rain delayed the start of qualifying, and Herbert obliged his other commitment, causing him to miss the 500. Herbert would never again enter Indianapolis. Jochen Aloisi, 2012. Jochen Aloisi was a popular driver who competed in Formula One from 1989 to 2001, starting 201 races. In that time, he finished on the podium 32 times. However, only on one occasion did Aloisi have a podium finish be a win, coming at the 1995 Canadian Grand Prix. The win was so popular that fans literally burst through the catch fence and onto the track as the race was still finishing. In 2011, Aloisi became a brand ambassador for Lotus Cars, who would join the IndyCar series as engine supplier for the 2012 season. Aloisi would enter Indianapolis in a Dallara Lotus for Fan Force United. By the 500, it was apparent the Lotus engine was significantly down on power compared to its Chevrolet and Honda counterparts. In the 4 races prior to Indianapolis, Sébastien Bourdais gave the Lotus its best finish with a 9th place at Barber Motorsports Park. At Indianapolis, Aloisi was one of only 2 drivers remaining with Lotus, as most of their teams had decided to partner with new manufacturers. He would qualify for the race at a speed of 210.094 miles per hour, compared to the pole sitter Ryan Briscoe's speed of 226.484. Aloisi was not at risk of being bumped from the field, however, due to there only being 33 cars entered in the race. During the race, Aloisi and fellow Lotus driver Simona Di Silvestro struggled for speed and soon dropped back from the field. On lap 10, they were each black flagged for failing to be within 105% of the leader's speed. Despite this, Aloisi continued for one more lap, causing him to receive a 2-lap penalty and finish behind Di Silvestro in 33rd place. While their success varied, these drivers showed a willingness to try a new racing discipline, which is admirable.